Hello. You've, at this point, heard lots of great stories, and you've undoubtedly learned a lot of good things. But I want to talk to you about unlearning. And I'll cover the what, why, and how. That is, what is unlearning, why is it important, and how do we unlearn? But I think that we need to understand the where first. And the where is, where have we been? By the time that you turn 18, you will have consumed 30,000 hours of media, 500,000 unique advertisements, 15,000 hours of formal education, maybe another 2,000 to 3,000 hours of religious service. You have listened to thousands and thousands of hours of your friends, family, discuss a variety of opinions, ideas, and beliefs. And at some point in this journey, you've likely had an encounter with someone who shared a similar experience as you, but experienced completely different outcomes, and thus have completely different beliefs. And this can be something as simple as seeing the same movie, attending the same school, or working in the same company. It's very likely the case that the two of you will have had different experiences with that same experience. And you will have developed different beliefs. And so if I ask you about your beliefs and experience in that school or with that company, I'll get two completely different answers. And I may not know who or what to believe. So how do we go about learning and knowing? I think that we tend to gravitate toward that which is the most convenient to us and most in line with what it is that we already believe, rather than trying to understand divergent perspectives. And we're bringing with us all of our own beliefs and experiences. And so we have just this giant clutter and chaos in our brains. And I liken it to a storage unit. And if you think about a storage unit that is just completely packed full, I'm sure you've seen one. The thing that you want and need is somewhere in the back of it. How do you typically go get that thing? My guess is you apply Google logic. That is, you grab the first thing that you can find, or instead, you make do with something else and decide you didn't really need it to begin with. This is how we do learning. We grab what's most convenient, we memorize it, we regurgitate it, and then we toss it somewhere into this giant storage pile. And we won't revisit it until we need to make another move. And here's the thing, you're going to move a lot. The annual survey attached to the U.S. Census reports that Americans will move 11.4 times in their life. So, you should probably tell your friends and family to start writing down your address in pencil. And you take with this the Bureau of Labor data, which tells us that you're going to have 10 different jobs and 2 completely different careers. Millennials work for a company for 4.4 years. So by the time that you're my age, you will have already had 7 different jobs. So you better get really comfortable with packing and unpacking. Whether it's your home, your office, a storage unit, or your brain. And believe me, even now, you have plenty of unpacking to do. My goal as a professor of sociology is to help students learn how to unpack that clutter. Specifically, I want them to learn all the things that they think they know and to unlearn all the things that they think that they know. We must unlearn everything that we have consumed up to this point. I used to teach this class called Ways of Knowing. And I had a former student in the class try to explain it to his grandmother. And he said, I don't really know what this class is about, but my professor is a sociologist. And she stopped him and said, sociology and philosophy are the works of the devil. Because they teach you to think differently and they teach you to question. And so she told him not to spend much time or effort learning what was being taught in those classes. And this is a problem that we often encounter in education, in the workplace, and society at large. We gravitate towards ideas that reify our current beliefs. But the problem is that doesn't foster growth or creativity. I told that student that if his foundation was rocked by a question, perhaps the problem isn't in the question, perhaps the problem is in his foundation. Unlearning helps us tear down those walls to get to our foundation. And for many of us, it's the first time that we will start to see where our thoughts and ideas come from. My job is not to tell students what to think. It's to teach them how to think. I want them to learn how to learn, and I want them to learn that unlearning is part of this process. It's not as simple as just throwing stuff into a storage unit. Learning is dynamic. We need to learn and unlearn. You are the product of several structures. And these structures shape your experiences. And this can be family, education, government, media, your socioeconomic position in society. All of these will shape the experiences that you have, the knowledge that you think you know, what you bring to the table in conversations. But here's the thing. It does the same thing for other people, but does it in a completely different way. So how do we unlearn? I see 6 steps in this process of unlearning. And the first step is to take inventory. This is where have we been, what we've accumulated along the way. I encourage you to put it all out on a table. Examine it. See if it still fits. Do you believe it or not? Is this something that defines you? Does it fit you? We think about the clothing that we have, and you hold on to old clothes, and it fits you. It's just part of who you are. We similarly hold on to old ideas because they fit who we are. But you also go through your closets at some point in time, and if you haven't done it yet, you will sometime in the future, and you'll say, what was I thinking? Like, that was my favorite shirt, and I wore it all the time. And you have lots of pictures in it, and every time you see that picture, you're like, oh. We similarly have to go through our brains and our ideas and take inventory of those thoughts. This is an ongoing process. In order to do that, you need to ask questions. Despite what your grandmother says to you, I encourage you to ask questions. ask important questions, difficult questions, the types of questions that we tend to avoid at family gatherings or in workplace conversations. But do so with open ears and an open mind and open hearts. And just as you ask these difficult questions of others, you need to look inward and ask those same questions of yourself. David Brooks, a writer for the New York Times, wrote an article called The Moral Bucket List. And in the Moral Bucket List, he talks about resume virtues and eulogy virtues. And resume virtues are all those lines that we add to our resumes. The titles we receive, the promotions, certificates. And these really equate to a great thesis statement in our book of life. But if all you have are resume virtues, then all you have is a great thesis statement. You don't have a great book, and you won't have a complete life. Every good book has colorful characters that are descriptively detailed, that draw you in and make you want to know more and keep on reading. These are the eulogy virtues that Brooks discusses. Whether we were kind, a good person, whether we were loved or capable of loving. Brooks took inventory, asked questions, and saw that resume virtues no longer fit his life. And he wanted to understand those people who were seeking out eulogy virtues. And the next step is to seek understanding. Try to understand the logic that runs counter to yours. Listen, I want you to approach these difficult questions with open ears. Rather than trying to prove yourself right, listen with the potential that you might prove yourself wrong. But it's not about being right or wrong. Too often we get focused on that, of trying to fight to be right. Sorry, Beastie Boys. If you focus on understanding, you're not going to go wrong. And if you try to seek understanding to difficult questions, your foundation won't be rocked. But it doesn't stop with just tearing down walls. We also have to rebuild. And so, in the same way that you have structures, they'll need updating. At some point in your 11.4 homes, you're going to have to replace a roof. You're going to repaint a room. You might turn an office into a nursery, or you may simply outgrow that home. Once you start unlearning, you will consistently need to build and update and rebuild by asking questions and seeking understanding to difficult answers. The art of unlearning is a shift in perspective, and this is something that you can apply to your education, to work, and to life in general. When you truly make this shift, you shift to living an authentic life. And I'd say one with purpose. And this is why it's important. The act of unlearning enables you to live a life authentically. You get to look in the mirror each and every day and know this is who you are. That's truly transformative. To be clear, your education is yours. You need to own it. You also need to be flexible with it and adaptable. There have been plenty of times in our life where our knowledge on a topic has changed or evolved. You think about how many of you carry rotary phones with you? None of us, right? We all have our iPhones. We no longer hop on a horse and buggy to travel across country. We hop on a plane. The Supreme Court frequently revisits the Constitution as we face new challenges and changes in our world. Common Core tells us there's a better way to do mathematics. The point is you can't be stagnant. We need to be flexible. And at that point, the knowledge is yours. At this point, the knowledge is yours. It's perfectly reasonable for you to come back to your original idea. Unlearning doesn't require that you change your perspective. Unlearning requires that you engage in the reflexivity of the process. The great thing is that this becomes easier over time. Once you start doing this, you can put it in all facets of your life. And checking the information, reading an article before you click share on that meme will become second nature. And the last bit is to share. You're the product of the labor of all of those who came before you. Your education comes with both privilege and responsibility. It's your privilege to learn. It is your responsibility to share. So share this information that you're receiving. The stuff that you've heard here today, share it. Share it with your grandmother. Share it with your family, your roommates, your coworkers. We live in a world that privileges creativity. Creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens through dialogue and discourse. It happens when we learn and unlearn. It happens when we refuse to participate in good, choosing instead to participate in great. And just as I will not apologize to the grandmothers of my students for teaching them to question, you should not apologize for questioning and seeking understanding to difficult answers. And I will end by sharing a quote by the late Alvin Toffler from his 1990 book, Power Shift, where he states, "The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." Thank you.